Hi there. Welcome to the From Lab to Launch podcast by Qualio, where we share inspiring stories from the people on the front lines of life sciences. Tune in and leave inspired to bring your life-saving products to the world.
Hi, I'm Kelly from Qualio, and I'm your host here at From Lab to Launch. Thanks for joining the show today. We've published over 60 interviews with innovators in life sciences across the world. It's been so inspiring to hear the stories of perseverance and innovation to improve human health and save lives. If you've enjoyed the conversations, please consider subscribing and giving us a review on Apple or Spotify. And if you want to be on From Lab to Launch, please see the application linked in the show notes. Today, we're speaking with Matt Wictome, who is a director at Datod Consulting in Wales, and we're excited to talk to him about what they've been up to. Hi, Matt. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to give half an hour just to describe what I'm doing and what my consultancy does and how I can help the quality fraternity. It might help with a little background of where I've come from. I'm actually a biochemist by training, and many people may know me from my sort of quality profession, but actually my background is in R&D, assay development, assay design, because really 20, 30 years ago, a quality profession wasn't on the menu at school or university. Basically, you came from a technical background, and now there's lots of opportunities to come in from a more sort of pure quality position. I actually got offered a job 20 years ago as a quality engineer, and I didn't even know what that job entailed. And I said, that'll be different. And actually, for the next 20, 30 years, I moved up the quality profession in different jobs. My kids found it really funny that in my job title, I had the word engineer for somebody that's actually quite mechanically inept. But, I was very proud of myself at the beginning. I was a quality engineer. So that was my start of my quality profession. And really, one of the reasons I've stayed in quality is the role in quality really is quite powerful in terms of your ability to make an impact across an organization and also touch every part of the organization, from assay development to product development to right up to marketing. You do touch every single function. So that's the reason I've actually stayed with quality. In terms of the company, 3 years ago, I set up Datod. I think it was one of those examples where life gives you an opportunity to do something different, and I managed to grab it in terms of setting the company up. Datod is actually the Welsh word for unravel, and a lot of the work I do with the consultancy is actually trying to unravel some of the complexity and the knots that organizations get themselves into. So in many ways, I've become an engineer in some way in terms of fixing organizations and trying to make them better. So even though my kids laughed at the word engineer, actually, that's more or less what I do. I don't necessarily fix mechanical things, but I help fix, organizations and quality systems in terms of making them better. The motivation for setting the company up was really, I felt there was a better way to deliver quality to organizations for patients. And really, we're different in two ways. Over the last couple of years, or probably 5 years, there's been a real focus on the regulations and standards, especially within the European market in terms of IVDR and MDR. And that's been the narrative over the last couple of years, and still is in terms of meeting those regulations. I set up the company really to try and move the conversation within organizations, not to sort of ignore those regulations because you need to meet them, but actually really to sort of move the organization, quality organizations, back into the sort of original perception of quality in terms of meeting patient needs, and I'll come on to that in a minute. So really, the focus was on the regulations. Really, my passion is sort of a purist in terms of how you can improve patient outcomes and build better products to serve the market. And obviously, regulations have their place and standards, but in many ways, over recent years, the focus on regulations, I feel, has sort of resulted in a degree of patient unmet need in terms of their requirements.
I would agree with you on that. And I love, that you mentioned that quality purist, we believe that very strongly here at Qualio as well. Let's get back to what the regulations really require us to do instead of all of this activity that's, really just for regulation's sake, right? Checking boxes and not staying with that customer centric approach, which is how I interpret what you mean when you talk about, focus back on the patient.
Exactly, yeah. And the other way we were different. I was lucky enough to do an executive master's a couple of years ago in strategy and change in leadership. And one of the things that I was exposed to was some of the work from the social sciences in terms of how complex organizations actually work, and actually some of the recent research in terms of how quality systems are actually complex adaptive systems, and they're not necessarily linear in the way we look at them. So some of this thinking I really wanted to bring to the table in terms of helping organizations sort of understand themselves and make themselves better. But really, sort of the core of it was really quality and compliance are not the same. I did see a recent poll in LinkedIn in terms of quality professionals felt that, I think 85% of them felt that there had been more focus on meeting regulations in the past few years than actually meeting patient needs. And as I said, I think really, patient needs have been underserved.
Definitely.
So I'm not saying that, regulations aren't needed, compliance is a given, but when you go and purchase a car, you don't buy it because it's actually meeting all the electrical safety standards. You buy the car because it fulfills a need and that you've got a requirement for it. And there are other sort of, requirements of the car, and the compliance aspect of the car is just a given. So I hope in the coming years we'll put the focus back onto obviously meeting the regulations, but obviously really sort of meeting the patient in terms of patient needs. So really, in a nutshell, my company is sort of focused in terms of trying to rebalance quality systems and put the focus back on the patient and use some of the new thinking that I've been exposed to over the last couple of years in terms of how you can improve quality systems.
Definitely. It's interesting too. I've spent part of my career in device and part of it in drug, and device side is very focused on patient needs and patient outcomes. It's part of the design control inputs. But on the drug side, I've always felt like that lacked. Like we just didn't spend any time considering those things, and then using those things to drive activities and risk within all of our activities in the organization, whether it's manufacturing or internal auditing. Like, are these items really critical from a patient safety or product quality perspective? So I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about approaches that you might recommend to become more customer centric.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of when you talk about customer centric quality system, I mean, the obvious question is, who are the customers of the quality system? That really depends who you ask. And if you ask a group of leaders, you'll get different answers. And obviously the one group is regulatory compliance. Obviously, any quality system has to obey the law. The other big bucket is customer experience. We talked about the patient. Is the patient getting what they want in terms of their needs? And the other bucket that's often forgotten is actually, I call it business health. It's the financials. Sometimes if you get the companies have to make a profit and they have to sell products and be commercially viable. And this is quite an interesting one because there's been very often a history within quality that we don't feel that we need to talk about cost and price and profitability. That's a dirty word, but that's a really important factor in making sure that patients get the products they need. So an example,
Absolutely.
Within quality engineering, do all the individuals know the general price of the raw materials? That's not always the case. And really sort of to rebalance the quality system and really sort of make sure these three customer groups are actually being satisfied at the same time. So it's not just compliance, it's the customer need, and it's also the business health in terms of the profitability of the business.
Yeah, needs of the business definitely need to be considered.
Yeah, so you need to grow the business. I mean, you want to be a successful business that grows and sells products. In terms of ways to be more customer centric, there's a lot of work in sort of the lean fraternity in terms of how manufacturing have looked at what's value in the eyes of the customer. And some of this methodology, if you apply it to the quality system, is quite interesting. So an example would be the control of non-conforming product. This is a requirement in the regulations that you bond products that's defective. So the regulatory perspective of that, when they examine you, is that they would like to see a system where your material is actually bonded and you don't release defective product. Now, in terms of the customer looking at this part of the quality system, they're more concerned with, are they getting the product they want, rather than are you bonding the product, as you should within the factory. But the operational, the business health perspective of this part of the quality system is more concerned around, are you scrapping the product off quickly? Are you making a quality decision quickly enough such that I can manufacture? And if you are going to scrap the product, are you exploring every avenue possible to make sure that it is a valid, a justifiable reason? So essentially, by looking at the quality system from these three different angles and putting sort of, three different metaphorical hats on, you can generate, indicators and metrics that really sort of measure whether your quality system is actually satisfying these different, and they're often conflicting viewpoints of the quality system, rather than saying, is it just compliant? Does it meet the regs? Will it pass an inspection? Well, it has to do that, but really it has to do more than that. It has to make money, and it also has to satisfy the patient and the end user and the customer of the products. So really some of the lean thinking that's been around for many years is quite, it's not often it's applied to the transactional processes of the quality system, but it can be, and it should be. And some of this thinking is actually quite useful.
Definitely. Definitely. So tell me a little bit about the importance of change and risk management associated with all of this.
I think for me, change and risk management, they really do underpin in terms of if you're going to transform an organization. And very often we talk about change management, organizations are concerned with, how you make that change, or very often organizations talk about change management and they actually talk about that what they really mean is how they change documents. But it really goes more beyond that in terms of how you embed that change, how you understand that change. But one of the questions that change boards very rarely ask when they look at a change is, are you making the correct change? Are you fixing the right problem with the right solution? Are you actually doing the right thing? Rather than are you implementing it in a controlled manner? Are you fixing the right problems with the right solutions? So really, this is a question that really should go before a lot of the change control sort of, steps that are actually implemented. It's not about the implementation. You can implement very well a very bad idea. I mean, many organizations do that very effectively, but that's really, there is a preceding question in terms of, are you fixing the right problems? So really, have you got that sort of, that ethos of root cause analysis and investigation within the organization? And that sort of underpin or goes along with risk management in terms of, very often certainly within medical devices, risk management is actually sort of restricted how you design the product, how you sort of build it, and how you sort of put it together. But really, risk management should go across all of the organization in terms of how you manage risk, because really the risk management is the essence of being a quality engineer. You're taking risk-based decisions every day in terms of whether you bond product, you release product, you rework product. So really effective risk management goes beyond just how you design the products. It really goes across the whole of the organization. So these go hand in hand, the ability to make the right changes in a controlled manner and assess risks as you go. These are the real drivers if you want to transform an organization and really make it effective, I think.
So how do sort of these alternate views of the world help you better understand your QMS then?
We talked about lean in terms of that being applied to sort of manufacturing over the last probably 20, 30 years. And it's been very successful. So I'm not just seeing lean and process excellence. It's been really, really effective in terms of streamlining organizations. But it hasn't always worked in terms of fulfilling the endpoints we expected in terms of that methodology. And the reason for that is that organizations aren't machines where you can control inputs and verify outputs. Organizations are very complex systems. They're living, breathing, changing organisms, and they don't often behave in terms of, if you're trying to control them in terms of, especially a quality system, it's a much more adaptive breathing system than just a set of processes in a linear fashion where you can try to control. So when you try and control them, then very often you find that's not always possible. And some of the thinking that came out of the studies I did a couple of years ago in terms of how social sciences looks at organizations as more sort of fluid entities, that really is applicable to the quality system, because it's not just a system, because it's in its name, it's a quality system. It's actually a changing system that evolves, and some of the changes you make can have unexpected consequences on other parts of the system. So it's not as easy as inputs and outputs and this very engineering view of the world. So that's one of the sort of the new areas sort of I've been working on in terms of use some of that thinking to actually make better decisions. And there's lots of sort of methodology and framework around some of the newer thinking around how organizations behave to help quality professions make better decision making in terms of some of those tools.
Definitely. Yeah, there's still people at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but if we could dive in a little bit more about the role of people, processes, and technology in building a transformation map for your quality system.
Yeah, I mean, when you're putting together a map to transform a quality organization or quality system from one point to the next, very often the buckets you use are people, process, technology. For me, it does start with people. It starts with really their skills and behaviors. And really, I think the industry now is in a position where a lot of it, if you describe the attributes of a quality professional, and very often they'd be very analytical, introverted, very comfortable with data. Maybe I'm probably describing myself there. Those sort of qualities are obviously needed. We need people to handle data and be comfortable with it. But I see the quality professional evolving in terms of, we need behaviors that are different. They need to be inquisitive. They want to connect with customers. They want to collaborate, be pragmatic. They see their roles as teachers and mentors and coaches. And that's a very different skill set than very often the skill set that attracts people into quality. So I'm not dissing that those attributes, because I've got some of them myself in terms of those sort of qualities. But really for quality evolve, the skill sets that are needed are actually going to be different. And also where quality is embedded. So we talk about sort of, from lab to launch, really for that to be effective, quality needs to be embedded within the functions it serves from the very beginning, talking to the customers and when you design the product, not as an afterthought. We built the product,
Yes.
we want to sell it. Let's get the quality guys in to do the documentation. Really, that collaborative way of working is needed for quality at the very beginning of a design process. So that requires different behaviors in terms of people. And in terms of process and technology, really, they're sort of intertwined in terms of we need to build processes that meet the customer's needs. And again, it's back to the customer-centric quality system. And is it meeting the needs of those that need to execute the processes? So it's okay having a great quality system and an electronic system to, within your organization. But if it's clunky to use and end users can't interface with it and it's painful, then it is obviously not going to meet the needs for the organization. And then the question always is it helping the customer? How is this helping the customer? Is it the best way to help the customer? And really, essentially, all decisions fall out of that. So
definitely.
So though we treat people, process, and technology as separate buckets, really for me they're all part of a more holistic approach to satisfying patient needs. It's not just the technology. Technology is very fashionable, and this is a the shiny bit of kit, but it's more how you interface that with the people and the process to make this more rounded solution to making sure you're meeting patient needs.
Definitely. So tell me a little bit about the practical tools and support that Datod provides organizations transform how they're running their QMS.
Yeah, over the last year or so, I've been working with a colleague of mine, Ian Wells, who's a very experienced quality VP, who's been part of the transformation of numerous quality organizations. Try to sort of, really write in a book what are some practical tools and tips to actually help organizations, start their quality journeys. So this is going to come out next year in terms of, what are the practical things you can do to transform an organization, not just in a theoretical way, but in sort of, the hands-on way. So this is coming out next spring. This is just a shameless plug for the book. It's called Transforming Quality Organizations: A Practical Guide. So it'll come out in the spring. But that does include some of the theory, but it also includes a lot of the practical tips of how to make a transformation. In terms of other tools, my company is very embedded in terms of helping organizations construct plans and turn those plans into reality. And one of the things we've been working on over the last sort of 2-3 months is a diagnostic tool that companies can use to actually self-diagnose their organization and work out ways they can self-improve improve in terms of building their roadmap, really sort of build their, and if they want to, partner with my organization in terms of, that making that roadmap a reality. So that tool isn't available yet. So I'm at the point now where I'm looking for med tech companies who would just want to trial that for free in terms of piloting it. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me after this podcast to get an access to the tool, then I'm more than happy to help them, if they want to just road test the tool. And this basically generates a report and some recommendations. So if any of your audience, want some help with that and will just want to have a go at the tool, then feel free to get in touch and I'll be more than happy to help.
Okay, perfect. So tell us what to watch out for in the future of quality.
I think the approach that quality's taken over the last 3 to 4 decades probably won't be adequate going forward, especially that we touched on it, the concept of the quality professional of the QA department. I can see more or less at times that quality group disappearing and being embedded within the functions they actually serve. And the skills and behaviors that we want, as we touched on before, I don't think necessarily that that's satisfied us in the past will actually be good enough in the future. So there's a watch out for quality in terms of are our skill sets changing as we go forward. I also think, there's been a lot of focus on regulatory compliance over the last couple of years. And I think this will settle down. Basically, it'll flush itself out and we'll get used to the new regs and et cetera, et cetera. And then I think it positions quality to really, ask itself what it wants to be in terms of what's the role within the organization. Is it more than just policing audits and executing audits and policing compliance? I think it offers much more for organizations if they can untap the power of their quality groups, to make better products and sell products that the customers want and delight and actually help patients in the long run. So, going back to the car analogy, my question to a quality professional is, do you want to be the person that the quality individual that hands out speeding tickets, or do you want to be the quality individual that helps build a more beautiful car and a more efficient car? And I know which I'd want to be. I'd rather be the person that actually designs the car than the one that hands out the speeding tickets. So I think the watch out for the future of quality really is quality is going to have to change. But I think it's, as I said, I've been in quality for 20, 30 years now. I've been in it because it is so embedded within the organization and is such a rewarding role. So I think that's a good place to be, I think.
I agree. I enjoyed my time as a quality engineer as well. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where can we go to follow along, learn more about you, get connected, find out more about your book and your tool?
Yeah, I've got a website which we can publish, and there's a lot of information on there. Every couple of weeks, I publish a newsletter called Quality Rebooted, which is really sort of a fresh look at quality from a different angle. So it's a bit lighter. It's got a different stance on quality. So if people want to pop into that area or subscribe to it, every couple of weeks I publish a new topic. So basically that'll give a sort of a flavour of things I'm interested in and things that I'm passionate about. And also it might have links to my site and my company's site, which gives some more broader help in terms of what support we can give and information. If anybody just wants to drop me a DM or a message, then that's a great way to connect as well on LinkedIn or directly.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Matt. It's been a lot of fun chatting about quality and how we can improve it.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of From Lab to Launch, brought to you by Qualio. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and give the show a positive review. It really helps us out. For more information about Qualio, our guest today, or to be a guest on a future episode, please refer to the show notes. Until next time.